Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. This evening, what we're going to do is conduct a design charrette. What that will really consist of is some of our creative folks over here will come up with some of the concepts of the wall that we've been discussing for a while. The goal here is to get as much input that we can from neighbors and public. We may be doing some multi-voting, taking a look at different schemes for the wall. And this is going to be necessary because based on this input, we're going to finish the design and get into the permitting process. Our goal would be to get this permitted this winter to enable a spring start and a completion during the next construction season. So this is the first step in terms of involving the public. There will be obviously DRB hearings, perhaps Act 250, and other venues, but this is probably one of the most important. We can get some really good input from you. So we have a great, we're working with a great team that we've worked with for a while on this. Ken Kaliski is with RSG, Thomas Morris and Jamie is from E4H, I almost said Morris Switzer. Paul Hobbs and Peter Gibbs are here from Engineering Ventures, and then Keith Wagner and Handaloop with Wagner and Hodgson. So why are we doing this? So, I mean, we're going to present some ideas, a little context, a little history, because I want to turn it over to the people that actually know more than I do about this. We've been dealing with sound issues with noise coming from our campus and disturbing our adjoining neighborhood, several neighbors. There have been a variety of different things that we've looked at: loading dock noise, trucks idling, backup beepers. We had pretty substantial analysis done on our central plant where we have boilers are operating, and identified some boiler acoustical issues that we had to deal with and are dealing with. As a part of this analysis, we're really cataloging every noise generation source on this campus. And then RSG has done some modeling for us and is able to tell us which things are the most prevalent in terms of magnitude and frequency, and also give us some ideas about mitigation. And so this particular initiative is the wall that we would construct along Mary Fletcher Drive, is really designed to reduce the amount of noise coming from our loading dock area and traffic on the top of the hill here, traffic noise, CCTA buses and those types of things. And Ken will review the effectiveness of what we're proposing. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Ken.
Thank you, Dave. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about the...
May I make one request?
Yes.
Don't stand in front of that because you're too much. So if you could swing around here.
This way?
The podium,
Oh, around the podium?
Just
Okay.
because there's such a contrast between bright. Thank you.
Ah, okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the technical details, a little bit of the background and the technical details of the modeling that we did to show the effectiveness of the sound wall. So the first slide here, keep going. There you go. So there are two issues that the sound wall is meant to try to alleviate. One is sound from the loading dock, and this picture here shows essentially how sound travels from the loading dock. If you have the cooling towers on the north side, and maybe I'll stand over here. The cooling towers on the north side here, and you have a building over here. So sound from the loading dock area sort of comes out into this sort of cone from the loading dock area onto the East Avenue, Case Parkway neighborhoods.
Can you orient with just pointing out where University Road is?
Yes. Okay. So here we have the central plant. The cooling towers are in here. Mary Fletcher Drive is the road that goes around the Medical Center campus. This is the East Pavilion over here, that main area where the drop-offs and pickups are. East Avenue comes north-south along the central part of this plan. And then we have University Road coming into where the ball fields are and the parking areas Latham Court is up here. Case Parkway loops over here. And then Bilodeau Court is down here. And this is really the extent of the, what we'll call the impact area for now. That
Helps with you setting those parameters when you show the cone of noise.
Oh, yes. Right. And Colchester Avenue is up here.
There'll be a few slides later that shows it even more clearly.
Yeah. So the other issue is vehicles on Mary Fletcher Drive, particularly at nighttime. Buses and trucks are very distinguishable, and in part because they're higher up on the slope on Mary Fletcher Drive, and in part because some of the sound is reflected off the buildings in the cooling tower and so is enhanced down to the neighborhood. So in terms of Mary Fletcher Drive and where the reflections occur, this is sort of the cone of influence for reflected noise from Mary Fletcher Drive, and it goes almost down to Bilodeau Court and, up East Avenue almost to Colchester Drive. So this is the area we're trying to mitigate most. So we did sound propagation modeling. And sound propagation modeling, we used the Federal Highway Administration traffic noise model for the vehicles along Mary Fletcher Drive. And we used an international standard for modeling for idling trucks and backup alarms and so forth in the loading dock area. We did multiple lengths of the wall, heights of the wall, and we found that a 12-foot high absorptive sound wall is effective in maximizing the noise mitigation. So on the left side here, they're both left and right. But anyway, the picture shows the relative sound reductions from vehicle traffic from Mary Fletcher Drive that you're going to get in the neighborhood. And so orienting yourselves here, this is University Road. This is Case Parkway in here. So the most impacts or the most benefit from the wall occurs in this portion of East Avenue and Case Parkway, but you get some benefits up East Avenue and down almost to Bilodeau, down to Bilodeau Court. Not as much, but you get some. So this scale is from 0 to 5. The difference in loading dock sound is less, but it'll be a noticeable difference in loading dock sound. So this is a cross section looking from Mary Fletcher Drive. We've got the cooling tower on the left. We have the slope down towards East Avenue, and then we have a home on East Avenue, and a little bit beyond, this would be the Case Parkway area. So this is a side view of the intensity of the sound. So before the wall is built, you have sound basically coming down the slope into the neighborhood. Behind an East Avenue home, there's the blocking of some of the sound, so it's a little bit less here. And then here's the sound wall, this little 12-foot object here. And you can see how the sound is essentially diffracted over the wall. And you can see this region in here, this what we call a shadow region behind the wall, where the sound is reduced.
What are the decibels for the different colors?
I don't have that here. Yeah, it's relative, but I don't have the actual sound levels. Okay, so a little bit about the wall itself. It will be sound absorptive as opposed to reflective. So what this means, we're going to have a specification when it goes out to bid that about 80% of the 80% of the sound that's impacted onto the wall is going to be absorbed by the wall. So what it looks like is that there's essentially a reinforced concrete middle, and on either side there are two layers. Essentially, if it was a sandwich, these would be the bread layers that are sound absorptive. And it's a durable material. It's essentially, as an example of one material that's used, recycled wood mixed with concrete. and it has and it works to absorb sound, and it's very durable. As it's mixed with concrete, it's very durable, and it resists salt and so forth. And I'm going to give you an example about how it works. It's just a little. So you have a truck, you have sound from the truck, and then the sound impacts, and then a smaller amount of the sound, 80 or 20% of the sound, is reflected off. And that's particularly important because you have the cooling towers behind you, and if the sound wall was reflective, you just have the sound bouncing off the wall and bouncing off the cooling towers and then back into the neighborhood. So that's why it has to be an absorptive wall.
And this is drastically different than a wall along an interstate, is that correct?
Most interstate highways have sound reflective walls. There are some, mostly in Ohio for some reason, they have sound absorptive walls, some in California, but yeah, most highway sound walls are concrete and reflective. Okay, all right. Who am I turning it over to next? Thomas?
Yeah.
Should I ask for questions? Any other questions?
Yeah. So given the proximity to Centennial Woods, I'm curious to know if there's going to be anything like wildlife corridors and how it's going to affect stormwater runoff. You know, what kind of impacts it will have on the local flora and fauna.
Okay. I'm just noise, but I don't know if we'll get to that
I
or not.
can give
Okay.
you, we have not studied that in detail, but based on the previous work that we've done, the wildlife that is, you know, transversing the bank probably or most likely are small mammals, squirrels, rabbits, and so on. That they would not be able to cross the road, but if you take a look at where they would go, if they could, they would be going into the loading dock area or right on the highway. So we think that any rodents or whatever would come out the south end, the north end, but frankly, we have not seen wildlife of that nature here. So the impact will be minimal in terms, because there's not that much, you know, many animals or mammals that are in that bank area.
Right, but with the sound absorbing nature of this, I'm curious to know, like, would there be impacts on birds? I don't know the answer to this.
Oh, Ken can probably answer that, but our goal is if we're reducing the sound from the campus, it would be, the impacts would be less than they are now.
Okay.
If you can maybe elaborate on that.
Yeah. Just quickly, you know, just go back to maybe the first slide, all the way back. Keep going. Well, this is all right. So you can see between East Avenue and Mary Fletcher Drive, there's a corridor of trees. And so that's where the birds would be. So noise impacts birds mostly by limiting the range of the sound they make, so they can't hear their, you know, potential mates. So what this would do is reduce the impact of sound from Mary Fletcher Drive on that corridor. It would also, both sides of the wall are reflective, so sound coming from East Avenue wouldn't be reflected off the wall into that forested area either. So it's a win-win for the birds in terms of sound impacts.
Okay, and then last question.
Stormwater?
Is there going to be any environmental impact statements?
No, there won't. We believe this is going to be a relatively routine permitting process overall. So we will be going through the DRB process. We've already done one technical review meeting with planning and zoning. And if we're required to submit an Act 250 application, we'll have to address each of the criteria in the application. And it may ask some of the questions that you're posing as well, but no environmental impact statement. You had a question about the stormwater. There is not going to be really any effect on the stormwater at all. We're not increasing the impervious area except for the width of the wall along maybe 500 square feet of impervious area. but the stormwater system that's draining on Mary Fletcher Drive will adequately handle that. That stormwater discharges in the north campus, just pond behind Centennial Park.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
So the meeting's going exactly how the design process went. We started off with scientific data and engineering from the acoustical engineer, and then we applied that to the design. And the first part of that design was to create a plan that addressed the recommendations from the acoustical engineer. So we're going to talk about the architectural component of that, which is very small. We're going to talk about the engineering component of that, the civil engineering, the structural engineering, and then we're going to talk about the landscape architecture, which is probably the most important part of the aesthetics. Obviously, the performance of the wall and the appearance of the wall are the two most important things that you're probably concerned with. This is an overall site plan of the project, and this was the drawing I was talking about earlier, where it depicts the main campus of the hospital, the central plant, cooling towers in this location. It clearly shows Mary Fletcher Drive coming around East Avenue here. We started to show Ken's sound cone with these red lines that indicates where those sounds are being projected to. And then we show in the white line the location of the new sound wall. It's approximately 500 feet long and, as he mentioned, 12 feet high. We're bringing it around a little bit further than what he had shown on his cone on the south side, just because of the proximity of the road and the way it turns. And the purple line indicates the existing guardrail. So if you drive the campus in the next few days, you'll be able to kind of get an idea of where that wall would be relative to the guardrail if you wanted a visualization of where it's located.
How far off the guardrail is it into the starting to the bank? What did you say?
Yeah, it's very close. I think it's 5 feet from the guardrail. There's not a lot of room because the wall, the grade does drop right off from that point. And you'll see some nice drawings a little later that shows a very nice section of how that lays out. Yes?
And on the south side of
Yeah.
the wall, that's the little trail down from
Right.
Mary Fletcher. So that's still going to be there, yeah. So
Yes, it will
use
be.
that as the line to-
Absolutely. We won't come around any further than that. And we are starting to look at maybe fanning this out a little bit so it doesn't hug the roads quite so tight, but that's still just an element in the design that we'll study later. So the civil engineer is going to talk a little bit about just the site logistics and civil engineering components of the wall.
Thank you.
Certainly.
So how do I work this?
Okay, so this arrow to advance it.
Okay, there you go. So Peter Gibbs from Engineering Ventures. Again, what we've been looking at so far is aerial views. Nice to show where the wall will be in relation to other things around the site, to show the vegetation, the general layout. So now we take it to the next level, which is putting it on a topographic map. We have to actually locate this wall, where it's going to be, what is the geometry of it, what is the extent of it. As Thomas was saying, the length of the wall is about 500 feet between the sound cone. So the sound cone is now located on a topographic map. We're bringing it a little bit further to the north to make sure we capture that sound cone to the north, and we're bringing it a little bit further to the south, as Thomas was saying, to capture the sound cone and bring it to a logical termination point. We're showing this in a plan view so that we know what obstructions. I mean, a civil engineering plan is trying to find out what kind of attributes the site has and what kind of challenges it has. In this site, we have, materials that are already out there. There's already a sign out there. We have to do something with the sign. It's not designed yet, but we have to do something with the sign. We want to know, locate it, where is it actually going to go? How is a contractor going to go out there and lay this thing out? How far behind the guide rail is it going to be? That's what we're trying to represent with these photos, with these plans. The next thing we do is we start to put the utilities on there. What other types of obstructions or challenges are we going to have? We have Buried electric, we have buried communication, we have water line, sewer line, other things out there that we're trying to figure out how is this wall going to be installed and how do we miss all those utilities? And does that change our design in the way of the location horizontally or vertically? We don't think so. We think we know where everything is out there. So right now, we believe the wall will be that about 4.5 feet behind the guide rail that you see out there right now. Then we started looking at cross sections longitudinally. Down here at the bottom, what kind of grade change do we have? How is a wall panel that is rectangular going to fit on a sloping site? So we're trying to figure out where those foundations might be, what are the elevations of the foundations, and then where is the attachment point of the foundations to the wall panels. Same thing with the sections. We're trying to see where the wall will be in relation to the grade. Is it right on the crest of the hill before it goes down to East Avenue, or is it a little bit back? It changes as you go along this 500 feet plus. So we're trying to figure out what kind of challenges we have. The next one we did is right on, I think it's 88, is this 88? Yeah, 88 East Avenue, to really see the sound is coming from two different areas, the loading dock and obviously the perimeter road. What does that section look like all the way through? How does the wall look when it's compared to a bus or a truck on the perimeter road? Where are the other things on the site down the hill? How big is that hill? That's what we're doing with these graphics here. So, in the way what we will do next, based on the outcome of this meeting and the input we get, we'll start to design some of the earthwork that needs to happen out there. It's very little, but we do have to set elevations of foundations. We'll look at the drainage. We'll look at stormwater street and tree protection and traffic control during construction. So that's what the civil engineering aspect of it all is. Not very exciting, but a lot of fun. So I'll bring Mr. Hobbs up here from Engineering Ventures, unless there's other questions. I don't know.
So who's gonna eventually let at least me know how much is gonna be defoliated from the slope of the hill? And because the trees provide stability to the bank
Yeah.
and the aesthetics of not only the wall, but the existing aesthetics, which, for my end of the street provide some green contrast to the concrete building, so
Sure.
I'm just trying to figure this out.
Keith probably address some of that.
Yeah,
We're gonna get there.
we're going to get there. I think we are. Yes, that will come. And Keith is the appropriate one.
Yep. Well, I'm going to get there too.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Paul Hobbs with Engineering Ventures. I'm a structural engineer. And I think I can be brief as most of my scope is below the ground. Typically, the structural engineer gets involved after there's a concept and the site and the layout, which is what Peter and Thomas have done. And then we take that and try and find a solution, economic solution that meets the goals of the project. The goals and the constraints of the project. I'm just going to put that down. So you know what the goals are. The constraints are the narrow strip of land. There's a drawing further back in the packet that shows it. I know the numbers are very hard to read. It's about 7 feet from the curb, 3 feet to the guardrail, about 4 more feet to the center of the wall. We're going to try and tuck the wall up as close to the street as possible. And with the foundation scheme that we have, we might be able to tuck it up a little bit closer.
Can I ask you a quick
Please.
question about that? Is the closer to the proximity to the street, the more effective the noise mitigation will
No.
be, or is that
Moving it 2 feet, 3 feet won't really, I feel confident about that, right, Ken? That won't make any difference. Moving it up.
In general, moving it closer to the source improves the mitigation in a way, but if you're right, 2 feet might not make a huge difference.
there's some generosity in there?
Yeah. Well, if the bus is right there, then moving it over, it might be you'd have to come back up and speak to that. We're thinking on the structural side more about the slope and more about the snow and the durability. And also there is a little path in there. So there's, I don't know the answer to that, but I would think it would be small, but it might be worth something. But we want to bring it close to the road for the tree issue. So
The input that they got from the owner was, when we plow snow, we don't want it to come back into the highway, and we don't want the salt and corrosive materials to land on the wall and stay there for an extended period of time. So it's a balance of how do you achieve that? How do you get the most effective sound reduction, but make sure you can build the wall in a stable way and have it there for a long time?
So the constraints we worked with, just to back up, were the narrow strip, the stability of the slope, the noise constraints of the construction. We can't have it being too loud, the speed and simplicity of the construction, and of course the need to maintain the trees. We looked at a number of different options for the foundations. The typical shallow foundation, which would be on the surface, which would mean excavating quite a bit and taking out a number of trees. Driven piles, which we don't want to do because that would be super loud. What we call mini piles, which are 8-inch steel pipes filled with concrete that would basically hold a foundation. And that was a wider system, and we finally came down to an augured pile system, which is what you see here. That's a better example. Basically, almost done. So the typical augured pile is either 18 to 24 inch in diameter, depending on what we need for the connection of the column. They're augured 10 to 20 feet down and filled with reinforced concrete. So, and lastly, the other thing we like about it is all the other different solutions we had were going to be wide, and this is just going to be as narrow as the wall. So there's ornamental trees, I know that much, and there might be a few other trees that are taken out right along the edge of the wall line. But because we don't have a wide foundation system, the trees right there should be able to be maintained. I mean, within some reason of how the contractor needs to get up and put a panel on the backside. This is just the concept that Keith came up with, which could be overridden by our charrette here today. But what I'm really want to talk about is we came up with this scheme of these discrete augured piles that says about 6 to 8 feet on center, which will also help avoid the utilities. It'll help let water flow underneath. The piles will be down below grade, and the sheets might be right to the grade. There won't be footings in here, so the landscaping will hopefully grow better. It's a very discrete foundation system that we came up with, which hopefully keeps it as narrow and tight to the road as possible.
One point, if you could just validate, that this has the least amount of impact on the area. We're going to minimize major excavations. You're going to be going with drilled piles as opposed to, trenching the whole area up. So this really does minimize the potential impact on any of the vegetation here?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Shannon really minimizes it. Like, we don't want any more trees to come down than you do. And if you're thinking that the whole slope's going to be decimated to put the wall up and then some trees grow back in 10 years, that is not the plan. We worked really hard to come up with to tuck it as close to the road as possible, to come up with a scheme that, the excavator will have a machine that will reach over the guardrail and auger down 10 to 20 feet, depending on the relative. Like, this is towards the south end. The grade drops off quickly. These might be maybe 20 feet piles. This is up at the north end where there's a bit more flat. These might be shallower. None of that will matter to drainage or anything. They're just a discrete shaft that goes into the ground.
You can see it, that first image, to your point, if you shove the wall east further down the hill, it becomes more complicated structurally and it's less effective acoustically.
Yeah, we want to keep it up as much as we can.
Yep. Which leads to Keith. That's all I got. Any questions? I'm happy to talk more geeky about the engineering, but
Go one more slide.
one more slide. Okay. There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, this kind of reflects what I drew, but
But greener.
nicer.
I just want to pull some drawings over, so bear with me a minute. And we can always move these out of the way again, but
Are we, are they all going to be on this side?
for now. No, I think I got it. So, gotta remember this thing. So I'm Keith Wagner, landscape architect. This is Hannah from my office, and we've been working with the team. And
Maybe one observation, we don't need the PowerPoint at this point. It would be very helpful for the film to turn those off.
Turn it off?
But if maybe the one,
Well-
maybe the one closer to
You might need a few slides to reference it.
So if
Yeah.
we were to turn the one on closer here, it would be helpful, but not hurting.
I can't turn one off.
would you want these somewhere else?
No?
Okay.
But
So,
if it's, do you want me to just turn it off temporarily or something?
Just because of the contrast between those panels and that white background is going to be very dramatic.
okay. Can it turn off for just a second until we get to that point?
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, no problem. So, it's been discussed, and what I'm excited about as being part of this team is this idea that the technology and the structural component of this was all geared to minimize the impact of the slope and the trees, which is what I was most sensitive to. So through these early concepts, the team has now created a sort of a big concept that we want to share with you. And we have 3 schemes, and I'll do them one at a time, and then we can. These are just little snapshots of a section of the wall, and then we can look at an overall full elevation of the entire length. But in this scheme, this is scheme A, and it has the 12-foot high panels, and they're roughly 8 feet wide. And they stagger, just as we've talked about. So the structural component of this wall is actually adding to the aesthetics. It's creating shadow lines. It's not a long linear wall with no breaks in it. These panels alternate and step back and forth, so you get shadows. In the recessed areas, the panels that are recessed, we're proposing vines to grow up. And again, anything growing on this highly textured wall will only help in the sound absorptive qualities. And in this scheme here, we're showing we would do 3 different species of trees. Maybe we have red maples, and there'd be 3 of them. And then we'd go to 3 river birch, and then we may go to 3 honey locust. So that was our big, that's this scheme.
Those trees are on the west side of the wall.
Correct, I'm sorry. So they're in between the wall and the curb. Scheme B, still 12 feet high, but what we did is he said, what if these panels were 6 feet by 14 and you'd stack them? Does that proportion feel better than the more upright, narrow ones, the more vertical pieces? And again, we started playing with composition of, do we go with 2 trees? You know, the sort of pairings of species as we go along. And in between where the recess is and we have our vines growing, on the ground plane, you can see, this is a plan view. Underneath the trees, we would have plantings. All along the east side of the wall, we would use probably a vine like Boston ivy. It likes shade. It's very aggressive. It covers very quickly. So the backside isn't, the backside of the wall, I'll call the east side of the wall, it's not the backside, is also planted and covered in vines. Along with looking up through the existing vegetation, it'll be backdropped with this vine on the wall. The third scheme is, and Peter mentioned this, as this comes along, as the grade is going downhill, we're going to have to step these in a certain cadence. Every one of them won't step, but they're going to become a logical point at which we want to step it. And we're looking at we're playing with those kind of dimensions. How much do we step it? And on this one, this is also horizontal panels with 5-foot by 14-foot panels, so that as we go down in grade, you always maintain a 12-foot wall and at the low point, and the other panel is going to be buried right underground. So thinking about constructability of the wall, transporting it here, what can fit on a tractor trailer, and the fact that we're moving it in and out, and then planting the recessed components, and then adding more vegetation and trees. We're kind of excited about where this is going, so I'm anxious to hear your thoughts and whether you like it or not. Let me get the last long elevations, and you can see it in its entirety, the 3 different schemes and the sorry, you're not seeing it, sorry. So scheme A, again, the vertical panels, about 8 feet wide, 12 feet tall. Every other one is recessed and covered in vines. And we started looking at the blocking of 3 tree common species and then alternating them so that it starts to break it up visually and make the wall feel not 500 feet long. B, if you remember, we went to the horizontal panels, and you can see lighter lines in here where we're even exploring score lines in the concrete and the soundproofing material, just to break up the scale of it and start to pick up some of the nomenclature that you see on the panels on the cooling tower. So now there's an extension of sort of the vocabulary on the cooling tower, and we're bringing it over into the wall. And this we're just starting to explore. And similar with C, where we went to the horizontal panels, 5 feet by 14, and exploring how we could score that. And those score lines would be not only on the west side, but also the east side. And I think that's important. So there's going to be a lot of shade on the east side, and it'll be covered in vine, but even in between, to have those score lines, I think, is important.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please do.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm following, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to duck out
Yep.
early, so.
Do you?
Oh. Thank you. Is there a height differential in these 3?
No, they're all the
They're
12-foot high.
Okay.
They're all meeting that standard that was set by Ken. But you can see how the road's going downhill, so as they come along, they step.
Right, but are some of them potentially 14 feet?
No.
Like, okay, I'm just
They're 14
misreading.
feet long
I
versus
see.
8 feet. So these
I
read
see.
more like a series of
Got it.
playing cards,
Yep.
and then these are the cards on the side, if you will, and just in terms of proportions.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, do you want that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. When you mentioned scoring,
Yeah.
so how does scoring impact the effectiveness or the functionality of the panel?
I mean, the scores are like 1/8 of an inch, so they wouldn't affect it at all. And you wouldn't go all the way into the concrete.
No.
They're very natural. They're more for visual.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at the most, they'd be 1/8 deep, just to give, be a saw cut, if you can imagine somebody running a shallow saw blade in there, just to break up that panel into modules that are matching on this side of the road.
Okay, so I have another part of the question then.
Yeah.
So what about this? So if you do this, does this potentially over time weaken the panel? I understand it's a very narrow cut, but I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, I think, I'm not quite sure. I know it's a detail that you're putting forward. I'm just not sure. First of all, I can't really see the scoring. I can't. And the second piece is I'm not sure, besides making it more interesting, am I missing something about the scoring? I just don't know.
Just to make it potentially more visual interest.
Okay, okay. And it doesn't, over time, it wouldn't make it more vulnerable to whatever.
You know, it's something we can bring up with the manufacturer,
Okay,
just to make sure. But in general, the sound absorptive panels come in all sorts of looks and feels. Sometimes they make them look like stones, and sometimes
Yeah,
they make
yeah.
them look like bricks. And
yes.
and so those kind of topographic changes are very common in these kind of panels. But
I think on Riverside Avenue, there's a stone wall that, a concrete wall that is made to look like a stone wall. That's what I meant to say. So, yeah, okay. Anyways, thank you.
And the manufacturer that Ken and I spoke to, who installs this in Canada and all over the country, they come with score lines. They have a pattern. It may not be the one that we want, but they do score them. They do have a pattern that they use. So it's not an uncommon feature to this wall system.
Thank you.
And certainly, you know, you should all come up and look at these, and we can put the enlarged plans up. That's the whole idea of this, so that you can really look at it. But we're trying to get it to you now in these sort of broad concepts. I think it's fair to say, I think the construction technique, the civil and the structural component of this is brilliant, that we can auger in, not do a lot of excavation, and by staggering excuse me, them, we're already making it more pleasing aesthetically. And then now we're adding more and more landscape to it. And I think it's important to note that on both ends, on all schemes, that wall isn't just going to end. We're looking at as the wall ends, it might taper down a little bit, and we're going to plant, you know, a series of evergreens, you know, a big grouping of evergreens. So the wall doesn't just end like a dead end. It'll sort of come down and be integrated into the landscape more.
Guarantee your trees?
I don't put them in, but I do guarantee they look good. Yes.
So what is it gonna look like down on East Avenue? When I look up, right now, I see all these nice trees.
Yep.
Okay? They have leaves.
Mhm.
They come down in the
Yep.
fall.
Yep.
And what do I see? I see the railing and I see more of the hospital, which is okay. But what am I gonna see when that wall's there? How is the backside
Yep.
really gonna look like?
It's going to look the same way in terms of the panels will be alternating, right? The same as it is from the other side.
Okay.
And we have
Why are you
vines.
putting in those kind of trees rather than like a cedar tree that will stay 12 months, a year, will be blocking everything? That's what I'm wondering.
Right. Well, that's a great question. Excellent question. If you think about, this is the road, here's the wall, and that's south, and this is all big trees. What can you plant there that's going to live without sun? Right? Because a 12-foot wall is going to cast shade in the afternoon,
That's
and the
true.
trees are blocking. So what we're trying to do is come up with plant material that is shade tolerant and we know is bulletproof, like Boston ivy. And when that grows thick, as you look up there, you'll see those woody branches of it start to take over.
Right.
I'm not saying that we couldn't find something, but we're just worried about how much sun they're going to get.
I think there is something
Okay.
that could be there 12 months of the year
Yep.
and look a little bit more pleasurable to the eye.
Yep.
Just
Well, and-
investigate that
Yep.
so that
definitely.
down below, that people look up.
Sure.
Keith, as an image, do you want to talk about the Boston ivy and the effects that will have?
What's it called, Boston or Bach something? What?
Boston. Like-
Boston,
like-
like the city.
Like the Red Sox.
Okay, like the
Yeah.
Red Sox.
So this is that zone I was telling you that I was concerned about, like how much sun. But, you know, things like hemlocks can handle partial shade, you know.
I had a barn that I just took off the wood because it was deteriorating the wood.
that-
So I had to be careful. Each line has this huge branch. But up at, in Grand Isle, there is I don't remember the name I bought to cover the barn that was on the shaded side. It was beautiful, and it has little flowers.
And it's evergreen.
It's not an evergreen, it's like a Boston ivory, but it has flowers, white flowers.
Okay,
And they have it up at the Grand Isle Nursery.
okay,
And I took 3 big bunch of it,
Yep.
had them planted, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I didn't want it any longer, but I still have the baby plants there that I'm just going to have as a ground cover.
sure.
So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
another
there's-
big possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a number of things, and we'll look at that.
To make
There's
it look a
shadblow
little bit-
serviceberry, there's 9-bark, there's a number of flowering. I thought you wanted evergreen, but if you're all,
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Even evergreens are beautiful.
yeah,
Okay, there's no two ways about it. The balsam are beautiful.
mhm,
They don't need as much sun,
true,
and they grow fast, and they're thick. And those are even better than just fir trees.
right. All right, no, those are good
So
things.
that's-
Thank you.
Think about something like that. Or
Okay,
go around some of the houses. You're welcome to come down to my house and look in the back
okay,
and just see what I'm talking about. And down to our house on the water, we have all cedar trees,
right,
and they're privacy. That's for privacy.
yep. All right, thank you, yeah.
Keith, could you describe how you plant those trees? If the wall is incorrect, what I'm looking at, you'd have to have an early phase of work to plant those trees, and then construct the wall, plant the trees on the east side, construct the wall, and finish your landscape on the west side. Because how are you gonna get the tree over the top of the wall and excavate it and everything else?
Right. I mean, they'd be hand dug, and they could crane them over, but it would become difficult. And remember, there's places further on the south end where it really drops right afterwards. So I think it's gonna have to be explored a little bit more, but I think the point is a good one. But you understand where we're trying to come from and balance all these things. So we're excited, and I think that's great.
Oh, I'm
Thanks.
excited to see what it's gonna look like.
Yeah.
Because I love trees and things like that, and I want it to look nice.
So
Okay.
one angle that I don't feel like you've shown us for a visual, not you, but just the presentation overall, is actually like Josie's saying, if you're on East Avenue and you're looking up.
Yep.
Now, right now, I see all the trees on the bank, and I would like to know how many you're going to have to remove in order to establish the wall. That's who I am, so I
Okay.
do want to know that. I understand that you're going to put some trees along the
Keep
street to
going.
beautify it. And I understand the possibility
That's it.
of having some kind of vine or something on the wall.
Yeah.
But I really don't know the visual change. I'm not going to say impact, because this is what many in the neighborhood wanted, so
Right.
I'm not going to call it really an impact, but the change will be.
Yeah.
And so, and I, like Josie and others, would like to understand, what will we see? And obviously wintertime is very different, because all of the trees on the bank there are very few evergreens. They're over close to where the sliding hill and
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's not on that section of the bank, but So if you could just give me an idea.
Yeah, and I think, so this is a photograph taken looking at it, without any changes. And you start to see the peekaboo of the buildings.
So where am I? Where am I standing?
You're on one of the side streets off East Avenue.
Jamie, do you remember which side street that was? Parkway? University?
So this is the where, okay, so this is close, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay.
So that's what it looks like today.
Yeah.
Like literally yesterday, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we wanted to do is show what that wall would look like, but you wouldn't see it, right? This wouldn't change, except that that's back there behind all of this. Now in the winter is where you're talking about, and you're
That
still
wall
looking.
seems to be coming down farther on the bank than I would have thought, based on what I think you're showing me.
It's the top of the bank, yeah.
Up the
Well-
bank, that's where the road is,
So
and those are buildings
what
above.
is that white line right, maybe I'm,
It's off the line.
yeah.
Is there a way to reference her?
That is the wall, yeah, but that's top of bank. The bottom white dash line is the bank,
Is the bank.
top of the bank.
So this is sort of disproportionate because the stop sign, I mean,
Well, it's closer to you,
Further back.
right?
yeah. So right there, the bank, it's very steep and people, that are more, I work here too, but they're in better shape than I am, go up that walkway or whatever it is.
Right.
Like the goat path, and literally, so that doesn't look representative to me. That's what I'm kind of trying to figure out. This is, yeah.
Well, I
I have
think
some concerns here.
there's some foreshortening here because of the perspective, but, and we can, I think what I'm hearing loud and clear is we have to make sure this is looking good, and we
Gotta
can.
make sure there's no erosion here either.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Well, I
very
think-
serious.
Well, and I think that's why this technique that they've come up with of augering in, you're not going to have erosion, right? I mean, imagine if you were doing a traditional foundation, you'd excavate down the bank and lose a lot of trees. And this way, we're not disturbing much except right where we're drilling. So I think it's a good technique, and I'm confident we can make this look good so that you feel comfortable with a mixture of plant material back there. Yes.
Yeah, could I just add that, if that's the scale, so if that's how it looks from the perspective of East Avenue, then that band is pretty narrow. And I assume that's relatively to scale, so given the scale, that's
Yep.
12 feet of height. But because it's up on the slope, it'll be, rather than everything you see, it'll be a band up at the top where the road is.
I mean, I think,
That's
yeah.
what they put over, that's the white strip is the band that we'd see.
Keith, you mentioned there's
But my
parts of
point,
the building peeking through. Is there a reference
My
point
point
on that
is
top image where you could locate the road with your finger
road
or
down.
a part of the building?
What are you
and take a
saying? It's
reference?
on the, that's up
Or is
there.
it not
on
coming
top.
through?
It's not. It looks to me like, the top of bank is there, which is right above that power line. Right, because in perspective, these lines are up at, what, 24 feet? So you're looking up. The bank is 30 feet of grade change, I believe,
What is the bank? What side of the bank?
35 feet from East Ave up to our road. But remember, we're looking at it in perspective here. But I think your point's a good one, and I hear you.
I want to walk this with somebody.
All right.
I'm serious about it, yeah.
Yep.
I think when we actually begin to do the layout,
Well,
Then
no,
it would
no,
be
but
good to-
you're asking us to make choices around a charrette, and I'm trying to say that I want to protect the neighborhood from noise. I just want to really know what I'm saying yes to. And right now, I don't feel secure about that based on this. I just don't feel secure about it.
there's no reason why we can't mock this up.
All right.
We can mock it up.
Right.
We can stick in and put fabric that would be representative of the 12-foot high wall, and then you would be able to visualize it from
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
East Avenue. I mean,
And as the
we could put
leaves are,
50 feet of
yeah,
canvas up there, which would represent, what it would look like. in
And
terms of-
with winter coming, you could see exactly what it would look like.
Exactly.
With the windows bare, with the trees bare.
And we could meet right wherever on the street and look up there and
Yeah.
see a section of it.
It didn't get dark so early, let's say.
Yeah.
Right now.
Well, the leaves are gonna be off the tree, hopefully, global warming sometime in December. But, you know, within another month,
Oh,
we'll
easy.
be able, we can mock this up, you know?
Yep. I think that'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we can get people together and walk it through.
Yep.
So what are our choices regarding the configuration of the panels? That's what you'd like to hear from. Rick.
Yeah, and I think you should all come up and take a look. Feel free to come up and take a look. Yeah, there's vertical and narrow, so there's a cadence that's very quick. And then there's the 14-foot panels horizontally so that it becomes, the cadence slows down, if you will, the cadence of in and out.
Okay.
So, but feel free to come up and look.
And then the other one is?
These are very similar, except the panels, one is a 6-foot by 14-foot panel, the other is 3 5-foot panel, 5 feet by 14 feet.
Keith, do you want to just scoot them towards the
Oh,
stem?
okay,
'Cause
yeah.
that might be easier.
Or just bring it right down to them,
Bring it,
yeah.
because there's the audience,
Yeah.
everyone you see over there.
Just bring it easy, yeah.
I got it. Does that help at all?
So the tree species, is it, like, say, the first one you talked about, how it would be free of one kind of species?
We'll keep passing this.
Is it the same in, like, so the bottom one, there would be 6 of the same species in a row?
No,
Or is
it
it-
doesn't have to be. You
Okay.
could say, if you all said, you know, we like
Mix it up.
this down here, that's fine.
Okay.
We were just thinking of what species would work along there and look good and provide good fall color, all those things. And remember, they're gonna grow and they're gonna go in taller than the wall.
Right.
So they're gonna even help even more that little peekaboo that you get in the building, right?
It helps with the noise and it helps with the
I don't know.
the soil and the dust. It even helps with the dust,
Absolutely.
so.
So are you proposing a colored plant panel in the first one? Is that true? That, or no? I just am trying to figure out if that's what.
It's a potential.
Okay, no,
right?
I'm not,
You could use a different color,
okay.
sound absorptive
Visual,
material,
yeah.
just so that we're breaking it up. I mean, I think that's, when you're talking about a scale of this, height to length, you want to break it up and provide places for shadows to occur. And that's why I think the staggering of the panels is
I like
perfect.
the staggering of the
Yeah.
panels and, you know, just, I'm interested in the contrasting shades. It gives a dimension, it gives a depth, and, you know, it really enhances the staggering. And so I'm interested in that, but I'm not like, oh, it has to be that way by any means. I'm just interested in it.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that even if those weren't different color panels, but they were the vines again, you'd still get that contrast and that, especially, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Boston ivy, it turns a brilliant red in the fall. Brilliant, and the leaves are like the maple leaf size.
Does it take over and grow on trees and kill
No.
trees? Okay, that's,
No.
some ivy does, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure that out.
So we're just trying to get some guidance from you, like, do you like the more vertical cadence? Do you like the more horizontal? That kind of guidance will help us a lot in terms of as we move forward.
What do you think? I like it.
I like them all, actually. I mean, I'd have to think about it more to decide which I like better. I'm just impressed with the band that they put up here in the picture, because from East Avenue, which is our neighborhood looking up, it's a fairly small thing we're seeing. So it's not like, new 40-foot wall that's going up. It's pretty compact and sort of straight.
So I always like to try to minimize development if I can, or the impact of development. And so any big structure that doesn't have any kind of interesting feature, or like you're saying, the different,
Planes.
the planes, you know, just the massing just is what impacts you. But when you have that, it softens that massing, and I'm very much interested in doing that. I think over time that will look better for people driving along the road if you're going to the hospital, and for the neighbors, or anybody on East Avenue who can see bits of that wall. It won't be this solid, like, well,
Right.
it will be solid, I don't,
Right.
for noise absorption, but it won't be just contiguous,
One
straight,
plane. Yeah, I
straight.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree 100%.
So, to me, that's really kind of important to me.
What's the backside of the A, of number A going to be? Is it the same as color as the front?
You know,
The
it,
shade?
it could be the same.
It
Sure.
wouldn't look like cement.
No, no.
Okay.
They come in different
Oh
materials.
my
I think
God, that would
that's.
look horrible.
Yeah. And that may be, that east side of that wall might be the vine, might be the other plantings that we're talking about, and they don't, I'm not saying that changing the colors, alternating, is a good idea. I'm just saying that was an idea we had. I think,
Have you used any of these ideas, any place that we can go and check it out?
we haven't, we, the landscape architects here, and I think the whole team, when we started this, we didn't want it to look like a highway barrier, a
Right.
highway sound.
Yeah.
And when you look at those are very long and all planar, you know, right there in the same plane. So this is a new idea. You don't see it often, but I think I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty
It
excited
looks
about
good on paper, but you don't know what it's going to look like when
Well-
we're, that's what I'm afraid of.
So I don't think the texture piece will really, the neighborhood necessarily will benefit from that, because you really would have to be close
You won't
up.
see
You're not
it.
gonna be able to see that kind of detail from the road. So, and I'm not speaking against it along the street side for the hospital, I'm not saying that, but, I don't think we will benefit from that. I don't think we'll see that detail.
Agreed.
So if that's extra money, it's not money that is well spent, as far as I'm concerned. And both B and C offer not only the positioning of the panel, but it offers that kind of interesting texturing. True?
Can I just ask, your opinion? So if we're looking from the East Avenue side, as these pictures are, that's pretty far away. How much of the texture do you think we'll see in terms of the scoring? Do you think we'll, in the winter when the leaves are off the trees, I guess we might see it a little bit.
A little bit.
It's not a huge thing. Obviously from the road, that's entirely different. You're driving
Right.
along it. You're gonna see more texture if you have it, right?
Agreed. I mean, if you think about it, think if when you're on East Ave and you're looking up, the last tree up there, if it had a branch that was 1/8 inch diameter, are you seeing it? Probably
Absolutely
not.
not,
So
right.
you wouldn't see that 1/8 inch reveal or saw cut.
But it's like a sandwich, you said, so if the hospital chose to have that kind of detail on their side, and they could do that, and our side wouldn't necessarily have to have that. I'm not
Agreed.
speaking against having a nice aesthetic wall, I'm just saying that I don't feel the need for that, because I don't think we'd
And
see
and
it.
it sounds like you would agree.
Well, I have a hard time believing we'd see a huge difference in the textural
No.
changes that
Yeah.
you're showing here on that side.
Right,
On this
exactly.
side, when we're driving along the road, it's gonna be right there.
Yeah.
We'll definitely notice it.
No, good point.
Sort of-
I was just gonna say, to Sharon's point and Josie's point of wanting to really get a sense of what it's gonna look like, and you said these are ideas that you have, but you don't know where they might be in effect, so that make it go look, or, is that something that's possible to look into, just to see, to know whether or not there's something comparable somewhere close by?
Ken probably is the
Ken
best
would
person.
probably know more
He's the
than
person who's designed the.
From our conversations with one of the manufacturers, at least, they've never seen the offsetting wall. It's harder to build, and if you're a highway agency, it's a lot easier to just put the stacked panels in between the beams. So I don't think this is anywhere that you can drive to, if it is anywhere.
But I think what you could do is go see a wall that's in a line
Yeah.
and see how unattractive it is, and there's no shadow lines, there's no break in its pattern. You see that every day.
Yeah.
But he's right, we did ask them about an example, and they just don't have them. I thought this was a good image too, Keith. They hadn't seen this.
Yeah, this looks kind of like option A. Would that be true with the tall panels, vertical?
Yeah,
That's-
more narrow upright, yeah.
You can see that in your packets if you can't see through the wall.
But you get a real sense of if those panels weren't staggered, you lose that little bit of break that creates more opportunity for landscaping and color and just less mass, regardless of the option that you choose.
I like the two-tone. I must admit, I do.
The two-tone meaning breaking up the texture with the vertical.
Yes,
Yeah.
I really do. I like that. I mean, in the picture, it's softer than the bold green in the drawing, but, well.
I just might have been pushing down harder on that green pencil.
But anyways, yeah.
How long will it take the Boston ivy to cover the wall?
Well, in the past, we covered a wall, in one growing season, it covered an 8-foot wall by 30 feet long, in one growing season. It'll go fast.
In one what?
One growing season,
In
one
one-
summer. So 1 year from the time it was planted to the following year,
Huh.
it went up 8 feet and over 30. With multiple plants, that's not just one
Oh,
plant.
of course, yeah.
We're gonna just move this out of the way so we can all have a conversation. Put it over here.
So I have a question for the hospital, Dave and Maria. Because this meeting, this charrette wasn't well attended
Yep.
by the residents, I'm just wondering, can this be put on? Sent out, did you send it out?
Yes, we can distribute that electronically.
And I think that the pictures that I don't remember if he's Mr. Wagner or what. Yes, okay. Yes, okay. Wasn't sure, I knew you represented them. I wasn't sure if you were the Mr. Wagner. Anyways, the pictures that he put forward, are you able to kind of take pictures with your phone and?
We'll
kind of
scan
put-
those and
Or
make them
put
available,
that in.
absolutely.
Okay, good,
So we could
because,
somehow put a PDF up on Front Porch Forum, if that's helpful. I can also send it out to all the people I have emails for.
so I think for the people that are regular attendees,
Attendees,
I'd
yeah.
really like them to receive it electronically.
So I can send it to our big group, and Julia, if you want to give me your email, I can add you, send it to you separately. Also, I could send with that a link to the CCTV, how you can access that if people.
Okay. Because I think that, I'd really like to know what other people think, and if some of the questions we raised would, generate other questions by them. And when were you hoping to actually get feedback? I know you were hoping tonight, but when
Well,
when
tonight's
were
the
you
first
hoping?
step in that.
Yeah.
Well, we're just talking, based on the input that we've gotten this evening, albeit maybe limited, do you have enough to work with to come back with a more evolved concept? Or do we want to wait until we circulate the information around? We have to provide some mechanism to get comments back? I mean, Maria and I can think about that.
Well, I think you could give people maybe 2 weeks or something like that and just have that be a hard stop, and anybody who, I mean, if they're interested, hopefully they'll respond, and if not, then you take what you have and we go to the next step. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know how that will, I know you want to, and I applaud you for wanting to move this quickly, because I think the residents have been very critical of the hospital not moving fast enough. So I don't want to be the cause for a delay, but I do feel like I'd like a few more voices to weigh in on this.
For now, we're fine, because our goal would be to break ground on this in, pick mid-April, or any.
Right, but I thought you wanted to go through the process this fall, but maybe not.
We want to start the process, so if it's going to take us probably, once we get all the input, it's probably going to take maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks to finish up what we got to do.
Okay.
And we're willing to bring that back too, before we start the permitting process. So I think we've got time. I mean, if we got comments back by, certainly by the end of October, I think we're okay.
Are people going to be able to make comments based on, a PowerPoint presentation being shared? Because a lot of this, there's a lot of questions and a lot of explaining and back and forth that people
Well,
want
I
to
think
have.
what you're asking, though, is, well, first of all, are there concerns that aren't answered by the PowerPoint? That's number one. Number two, hopefully there won't be many. Are there, with the options that are available, do people support one versus the other? I think the pictures need a little bit of verbiage to go with them to differentiate
Well,
that.
what I was getting at was that my gut tells me that if we want more voices to weigh in, a better way to do it than, via electronic emails back and forth would be to, you talked about walking, would be to work out another time when we can really get some people together who maybe couldn't make it and do kind of a walk and also have access to, some of the visuals and to give people another option to, another time to talk. We do have some time, as you know, some of us on the 23rd.
Right. So to me, I think you need to do both. Because I don't know if the 23rd you'll get as a really good representation of the neighbors, or you'll get the similar representation.
Do you think we should be going to next week's MPA with something? I don't know.
So I don't know what that agenda looks like, but remember it's November election, and so there may be candidates, there'll be ballot items. You're going to hear about, the sewer and the high school and.
And we actually talked about this before the last MPA, and we got no attendant,
Right,
yeah.
right. So go ahead.
Would it be too presumptuous, we distribute the PowerPoint with the verbiage and make the request, would it be too presumptuous if we took each of these options and made a good depiction of them in a description, and asked people to share their preference? ABC, or is that just?
Well, that's really what I was asking for, but I think you can do that electronically, and then I don't disagree with Maria that walking and just having people feel reassured that they understand really what's going on. There were some questions that were generated from this. There was the environmental questions raised, which I think, I wish we had a secretary, and I don't mean you, because that's what you end up being, Maria, but that's not what but I wish there was, a way that we could capture those questions and just have the answers to them. But if there's a link to the presentation, then people can watch that.
We took notes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we
So
did.
we're good, we took notes, we can frame those questions up so
Yeah.
no.
So I think that having those questions will at least know that people that did attend asked questions and weighed in on some of the detailing that you mentioned, and certainly, you can share my comments, I don't care. I want people to know that, I want people to know that we're not losing sight of the purpose of the wall, which is to mitigate the noise. We don't want to lose sight of that, but we also are trying to deal with the aesthetics of it. So I guess that's really important that people know that.
So I just want to clarify, so when we say we're going to walk as a group maybe, then that might be hard to gather everybody together, but if we did, as Dave suggested, this mock-up, 50 feet of mock-up with fabric, that could be communicated to the neighborhood and say, hey, it's going to be up for 2 weeks. Walk by, look up there, that's what you're going to, that's the scale of it, that's what you're going to see. Would that be helpful?
Well, I think so. I mean, some development, they put up balloons saying this is how high the wall's gonna be, You
Yeah, but
can't
that's a string
necessarily
on a
see
ball.
that.
But this would be a physical barrier, which I think would very easily replicate what you would see looking up that slope. I think it's different.
But I'm not suggesting that we all have, ropes and scale the hill, but I am suggesting that, I work here, right as you start on, you're coming from the parking garage or whatever, and you start, and you've got the path. You can certainly look at, you can see the guardrail, you can see the slope of the hill, you can see the road, and there could be some markers, just a few, that people could see easily to understand how far 7 feet is from the guardrail, what you're disturbing. I think those are the kinds of things, okay, that I think are number one. Number two is the choices, I think, are the other piece of it. And if there are existing trees that have branches that are 12 feet from the ground, I think it would be interesting to have like a little ribbon saying this is really the height of that. And so that would be good from the hospital. I don't know how people would see that from East Avenue. I really don't.
Well, we were thinking if we did this fabric mock-up, and maybe it's only 25 feet or whatever, we don't want it to blow down,
Right.
we could erect it same height and
Oh,
orientation.
you could. Oh, you're really going to make
Right, we would
okay.
erect it, and then
Okay.
people could go down
Yes.
on.
Yes,
on
no,
either.
no,
Just
no,
come
that would be
down.
wonderful. No, I'm sorry, I missed the point. Yes,
Yeah, that's
I
what
think
we-
that would be great.
Now,
yes.
it won't be the same material, it'll just be a representation of,
Oh, you're not going to create a little wall for us?
yeah.
But I also think it's worth pointing out that the wall isn't going to be 7 feet from the guardrail, it's 7 feet from the curb.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, we can flag that.
Well, we will, I'm just
Okay.
saying, because there's
Okay.
things being recorded.
Yeah.
I think that would be really helpful, don't you? Yes, yeah, good.
Okay.
That's great.
Well,
Give us
Maria will
the-
get back with the plan, we'll,
Yeah, we'll
And
start,
timeline.
we'll start by getting the additional, electronically getting
Yes.
what you add, we'll add that into the presentation. I'll send that out to everybody I've been in communication with who's been part of all of the noise discussions.
Right, perfect.
And of course, Julia, who attended, and Bob Stillman's here, thank you for coming. And we will, we'll do that as a first step, and then we'll also have the team work on the Q&A, because there were some good questions asked and some interesting topics that came up that we can share as well.
Yes.
And then these guys will start working on what we're calling a mock-up.
yeah, what we'll do is
Mini-
we'll just send a paragraph out about what the plan is,
Yeah.
what we plan to do.
And so that's it, and I'll summarize that, if that was
That'd
the.
be good.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. This
Thank
was
you.
really
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.